Romeo and Juliet is so famous that we never actually get to read it for the first time. We always encounter it having known, already knowing a lot about it. It exists in the domain of the always already. We know the plot, we know the story, we know various facts about it. We've seen various spin-offs. It's also the case because most of us encounter this play for the first time very early in our ability to read Shakespeare, that we kind of plod through this and have difficulty getting through it. If it's often the first or second or third Shakespeare play you read, and so it's mostly a garble, and you're dependent upon paraphrases and notes and things like that. So the first reading through isn't really a full reading because you can't independently navigate this text usually. Certainly I couldn't. I'm pretty sure you couldn't either. You did not have the kind of fluency that you might get later as, say, a master's student. So actually, Romeo and Juliet becomes hard to see. I want to walk back a few pieces of things we think we know about this text that are not true. And then I'd like to ask you to do the thought experiment of reading this play as if for the first time, asking yourself, not you know what's going on, but trying to see how the exposition works brick by brick and seeing surprises that will never surprise you because you already know where this is going. The ending isn't a big surprise. It's a tragedy. The audience would have known that. Other things are. Let me say a few things. There's no balcony. The word balcony doesn't appear in the text. The word is window. Balcony scene has become famous because of 19th century theatrical history that they loved big scenery, so you made a big deal of the beautiful architecture of Juliet's Italian balcony. It's just a window, kids, just a window. We are very accustomed to using the Capulets and Montagues as symbols for some kind of social or political division in our own world. We make them different ethnic groups, we make them different religious groups, we make them warring nationalities. Say in the Balkans, this gets done, they become the Serbs and the Croats, the Serbs and the Montenegrins. Um, they become the Jets and the Sharks. It is shocking the degree to which the Montagues and Capulets have no reason for their feud. I will quote Prince Aeschylus, bred of an airy word. The only evidence we have in the text is that this feud is about nothing. They are just screwing around. Now, without taking away the usefulness of using Romeo and Juliet to kind of represent other kinds of feuds and social divisions and kind of making a moral argument against those divisions through the kind of sympathies with the lovers, I want to point you to the scarier idea that this feud is about nothing, that the recklessness of especially the older men who should be in charge, who are fomenting the fighting in the streets, is about nothing. They are just screwing around with people's lives. That is a more alarming idea. But the text doesn't give us anything you want to. If you want to give them a serious reason for fighting, a political or social, an understandable reason, you have to import that into the text. It's not in there. The only thing the text tells us is that the prince's criticism, bred of an airy word. This comes out of nothing. This comes out of mere talk. Okay, you may also have been told at some point in your education, often in secondary school, that it is not unusual for Juliet to be married so young, that 13 is a perfectly normal age to be married at in Shakespeare's time. This is ridiculously untrue. This is ridiculously untrue. The average age of marriage for Elizabethan women was 26. I'll tell you this, William Shakespeare personally was the father of two daughters. They did not get married at only 13 or 14 years old. They did not get married in their teens. No. Um, Daughter number one got married a little early, 24, below average, but a respectably below average. Like the average age was 26 for women. Um, Daughter number two, Judith doesn't get married till she's 13. No, 31. 31. Okay, that is a little late. But 31 is more reasonable than 13. 13 is ridiculous. And we know from Shakespeare's sources don't make it 13 or almost 14. Shakespeare changes that. It is an intervention he makes in his sources. He makes her ludicrously young. Now I would like to step back, and we can ask why. I would like to step back through some of Act 1 and explore what's going on as if you had not read this before. Let's talk about Juliet's age. Juliet does not get mentioned until Act 1, Scene 2, in which Paris and Capulet Sr. and Capulet are negotiating over whether she's ready to get married or not. I would point out no age is married here. Try to imagine you're at the debut of this play, and two characters on stage, and they're negotiating about the unseen daughter's hand in marriage, and the father says, no, she's too young. And now you, as an audience member, have to start generating an idea of how young is too young. And Paris is like, younger than she, or happy mother's maid, and that's when we find out how old she is. I mean, that's a ludicrous thing to say. Younger? What? That can't be right. But that would make Paris's arguments like, there are younger wives than your daughter. Women younger than your daughter are married and happy married. So this gives us a data point to start estimating. Shakespeare is tricking us into estimating Juliet's approximate age. And then Capulet says, the hopeful lady of my earth thing, lovely, and says, let 2 more summers wither in their pride ere we think her ripe to be a bride. 2 more years. Okay, whatever her age is going to be, we think she is 2 years younger than her father would like her to get married. And at this point, we have all probably, if this were really our first reading, which we never got to have, we would estimate an age for Juliet. Then we go into Act 1, Scene 3, and we have a discussion of Juliet's age, and it turns out she's almost 14. She's going to be 14 on July 31st. Also this, the play seduces us into not expecting that. That is a trick. That is a surprise. We have been led to think about, how old is she? A little too old, a little too young. There are younger women who are married, but really her father being more comfortable for 2 years. I don't know what you thought there. You made her 16, you made her 18. What did you make her? Right? You didn't make her 13 3/4. Nobody did that, because that's ridiculous. That is too soon. To use a phrase, synonyms for which run through this play: too soon. I also walk through the process of Act 1, Scene 1, which actually is somewhat different in the two varied original texts. It's more elaborate in the second version, the 1599 version, than the 1597 printing. We have a bunch of comedy dopey servants who come in, and the servants are being jerks. They're being macho idiots. And this is expected for stage servants. That's fine. They're bragging. They're talking about their penises. They're talking about how tough they are. And they start a street fight, and they have a comic street fight where they kind of figure, they're trying to say, well, what is the line of insult, right? The biting the thumb is all of our set. If I say aye, nay, I don't bite my thumb at you, sir. But I bite my thumb, sir. Right? And this is a normal thing that the Elizabethan assumption is this is what kind of servants who are not properly supervised get up to. What's interesting is that it gets worse when one of the aristocrats who should be calming things down steps on stage. Benvolio steps on stage, the servants escalate because they've got a superior, because they've got one of the masters there. I want to point out in the ideology of the time, one of the masters, even the young masters showing up, should chill things out. That the Capulets and Montagues are expected to show control of their servants and not menace the public peace. Um, Weirdly, Benvolio's appearance leads the Montague servants to escalate things, and the fight starts. Benvolio is the only person in this scene who behaves appropriately. He tries to stop the fight. He does what a good Veronese aristocrat, even junior division, should do. He tries to keep the peace. His name is Benvolio, after all, which means goodwill. He is benevolent, as his name implies. Tybalt comes in. Another young man escalates it further. Here, the masters are pouring oil on the fire that they are supposed to douse. This is bad enough, but then, they're young. This is intemperate youth. So a lot of intemperate youth in this play. Get used to it. Then the masters come in. The patriarchs of the two families arrive on stage, ridiculously comically, old men shouting at each other, Capulet calling for his sword, and Lady Capulet saying, "You're a crutch, not a sword. You're too." The senior members of these aristocratic houses have a responsibility to shut this down. They are egging it on. This is a play, in many ways, the politics of this play are about reckless disregard for public safety and keeping the civil peace. In fact, if there are any politics in this play, I would give it to the citizens, who are citizens is a social group of urban middle class people who are lower in status than the Capulets and Montagues, who have to come in with their very middle class weapons. They're built not their glamorous swords, but their kind of bills and partisans, and have to break up this street fight that the rich people are starting in their streets. And they shout, "Down with the Capulets, down with the Montagues." To the extent that the common people have any voice in this play, they hate the aristocrats. They hate both the leaders of both houses, and they want them to stop endangering the peace. The other political question we have is, why doesn't the prince exert better control? Why is this keep breaking down? What is the power vacuum doing? But there's no question that the problem in this city is starts with they have trouble with a capital T. That rhymes with C. That stands for Capulet. Montague is also to blame, though we see much more of Capulet on stage.